Hey guys, welcome back to the Thriving in Love podcast, the podcast that challenges the status quo so couples can thrive as their most authentic selves. Today on the show, we have a very special guest, Alison Pagano. She is the creator of Embodied Dance, a transformational modality that bridges somatic healing, movement, leadership, and human potential. For over 25 years, she has integrated somatic psychology, body language intelligence, spirituality, and embodied practice to help people access the body as a pathway to healing, creativity, intuition, and authentic self-leadership. I am so passionate about all of these topics. As you guys know, my dear listeners, that psychology, the somatics, the pathway to intuitive intelligence, to tune out the noise of the external world and tap into our inner authority is everything I talk about here on the show. And it really leads to not just leadership in our work, but in our homes, in our relationships, and most importantly, in just the way we individually choose to become sovereign human beings on this planet. So, Allison, welcome. Thank you so much for sharing your gifts and your wisdom and your light with my audience today.
Yeah, thank you, Sana. Thank you for the beautiful body of work you've created, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, likewise. I'm excited to dive into your body of work. But before we do, I would love to just dive a little bit into what got you started in this work. I mean, 25 years is a long time to be in this field of work because there was very little information out there back then.
Sure,
So
there
what was
was.
happening in your world?
Sure, there was. Well, like most people who come to a place of healing, I was in a place of pain, and I got to the edge of not wanting to be there anymore. And I was a 20-year-old, and I was actually doing part of my undergraduate degree in Australia, believe it or not, because I was doing cultural anthropology at the time in the late 90s, and I had an eating disorder. I was very, very skinny, very unable to be with my own self, unable to feel, to express, to connect. I was just very shut down. And all these people in my life trying to help me and do different things and, send me to nutritionists, and nothing was really working. And I ended up taking a class here. I've told this story probably a few times, but so I was taking a class with an indigenous woman here called Spiritual Wellbeing, which was like, in the late 90s, it was like, I didn't even know you could take something like that. And, she brought us into the sphere of all these different modalities I had never heard of before. We were doing transcendental meditation and learning about chakras and all of these things. And it was like, whoa, there's like a map of things that I can see here that this woman is presenting. And she held such a safe and sacred space that I really felt like I had the capacity to meet and look at those things, which I think is sort of fundamental. Ultimately, what ended up shifting for me was that we had to present our concept of the divine at the end of the semester. So I knew that I had to, our class was held in a dance studio, which was like so strange. It was like, that's where they put the spiritual, healing class on campus. So I was like, I think I need to move with whatever this is that I'm discovering, because I was learning about these different aspects of healing and the depth of the mind-body connection at that point. And it was really fascinating to me because I started almost self-diagnosing, like, I think I understand, like I'm relating to, I'm feeling like a loss of my own power. I don't feel like I have a voice around this. And so it was born out of a place of curiosity of what happens if I actually meet those parts of myself, and what happens if I allow myself to not only meet them, but feel them deeply enough to give them a movement, to give them an expression, and to see what's underneath there. Because at this current time, I just can't quite navigate, and I don't want to hate being in a body. Like, that's not why I'm just kind of got done with it.
I
Yeah.
mean, it sounds like it was purely intuitively guided, though, from within you. Because was the class or, the curriculum, was dance part of it at all? Or
No,
did...
no. I was always dancing in the like the backyard when I was a kid. Stevie Wonder, Madonna, the
Yep.
80s and such. We had the best music. But I grew up in a house of police officers, so it wasn't like I was really encouraged to, be in the arts in any regard. So I ended up putting myself in dance classes when I started working around 15. And I realized that I felt better. Even though my teachers were
Yeah.
pretty awful people, they were pretty nasty and rough. I was like, there's something about me moving my body this way that I feel like I don't feel as heavy anymore. So I just kind of mental note, dance is really good for me. So when we were presented with this opportunity of like, how do you touch the divine? First of all, it was like completely overwhelming because I'm like, who am I to even think I know how to describe what that is? But I could sense enough that there was a task being called to me. So I was courageous enough to say, I'm going to try to really meet
Yeah.
what this task is. And it was through that exploration, and it wasn't pretty, and it wasn't like, about trying to make a beautiful choreography. It was
Of
really
course.
like sitting with the stuff that was pretty stuck and tender and raw, and underneath the layers that, touching into grief or little
Yeah.
pieces of anger at the time. I
Mhm.
wasn't able to touch into my anger or rage until much later on in life. I think as many of us can't. But it was through touching that and then giving it a full expression, showing the class what this thing was, and saying this is how I touch the divine, in my way I think, because I'm just discovering this. Um, there was something that really
Yeah.
shifted because I was receiving this compassionate witness from my class,
Mm.
and I had permission from myself and the teacher to really be in it. So I just went for it. There was
Yeah. That
something about that
container.
moment. Yeah, yeah. There was
Mhm.
something about that moment, that being seen in that rawness and being in a place of just self acceptance and safety. And it was so something I hadn't seen or experienced before, that there was something that started shifting in me, that I was like, I think I can work through this. I
Yeah.
think I'm onto something. And it wasn't really like, okay, I'm cured, but things started shifting. Like, I think I've crossed a threshold here where I
Yeah,
don't
or
have
like you
to live like this
found
anymore.
something that works. And I think that's
Yeah,
usually the big moment where, you know, of course, there's integration after that, for sure,
right.
for like the rest of our lives, right? But I think when you are able to feel that initial connection to those deeper parts of yourself and to the divine,
Mm,
it's it's such a profound experience. That first moment that you experience that, I think it's always going to stick with us and always be the doorway into
mm,
this other realm that gives us deeper access, that gives
absolutely.
us more magic, that gives us the fullness of the human experience gets to come alive from within. I feel like when we do initially tap into that, and then you spend the rest of your life, feeling and moving and expressing.
Mm,
And I think something that's so beautiful about the container that you described is that, to me, embodiment truly is when you are witnessed and
mm,
you are perceived in the way, like being seen, right? We talk a lot
mm,
about being seen, and
mm.
you got to be your freest expression of self in that room with others that are just pouring love and acceptance out towards you. And I think that's such a magical experience. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you. And I really loved what you were sharing about having, yeah, the personal experience with it. I think is sort of fundamental, because we can read a lot of books, and we can have teachers, and we can even go to different schools of thought or religion and such and parrot certain words. But there's something about meeting that personally that, again, you don't know until it's happening how vital it is and how much it can change you. So it was sort of the missing link at that time. And it went on to be something I would do later on. So I would cultivate these performances for adults, that when I was back in New Jersey, in the
Mm.
New York area, especially, where I would lead them through these processes and have them perform it. They weren't professional dancers, but to give them that opportunity of moving through something and having holding and safety and being witnessed in this process. So I really believe in that, in terms of the being seen, and how that can transform your relationship with what your own identity is and what you feel is acceptable for you. And yeah.
And I really think that it makes sense in the sense that so much of our trauma, so much of our grief, so many of our wounds don't get to be witnessed, and which is why it gets stored into our bodies, because it never gets to close that loop of being witnessed, being seen, being experienced to its fullest capacity. So,
Mhm.
talk to me about what that experience was like for you when you connected the dots with it's not just how you access the divine, but it, like you mentioned earlier, it's how you access your grief. And
Mm.
how is the movement helping you access those deeper suppressed emotions that
Right.
we store in our bodies?
Right. And it's fascinating in a way. And I'm so happy to see that the field of somatic psychology and somatic trauma therapy is really springboarding out into the world in a big way right now, because we're finally getting that talking about things isn't enough. There's something happening in the body that's different than the mind, and that's something that I learned pretty early on. And it wasn't like I went through this healing process and then I started building embodied dance. It wasn't quite like that. I started gathering tools and really researching and studying and getting a lot of modalities under my belt so I could understand what was happening and what is actually, how do people heal? How do they heal not only
Yeah.
temporarily but long term? So I ended up, studying all of these things. And what I ended up creating now and what I share with people is a process where we engage the mind enough to understand the story that we're holding,
Hmm.
and we give the space for the emotions to be present. And there's a very particular way that I lead people to see what do they notice in the body. So there's a field of work called somatic experiencing, which has a similar flavor. I learned about that also later on after I had developed my method and such. But what's different about my work is that we give it an expression through dance. So we
Hmm.
are moving with it in a more nuanced, expressive way that you get to touch into different layers. And it's not just about completing the movement and running away or getting out of the space or having a release, but when we turn it over to the body and we say, okay, I understand this mentally, I'm feeling it emotionally, and we have these certain prompts that we walk through around how do we move the energy that wasn't expressed. What I and the people I work with see is that the body has a different interpretation of what's actually there. And you start receiving insights. And this is the part that you can't predict or you can't figure out or you can't talk your way through. You have to turn it over to the gnosis of what's being held. And I've seen it so many times for
Hmm.
myself and the people I work with is that we start a movement practice and there'll be tears. There'll be this, extraordinary realization because it's something that they can sense that their body is finally bringing forward, remembering, or allowing. And
Hmm.
it's such a different way of working than we've ever been taught. We've just been taught, like, oh, you just figure things out and you make it work and you go ahead with things. And we've let go of this gnosis that we're carrying around that is so powerful. And we've
Yeah.
never been taught to tap into it, unless
Which
you're
is
really
so
diligent and you've done your
wild.
own study. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even if you study it, I think, like you mentioned, it's so different from reading about it or hearing about it versus experiencing it for yourself, because that's something that I experienced also just intuitively felt so much grief, so much trauma. I was healing so many deep wounds inside of me, and I just started moving my body. And I like to say it's the language of the soul. Like our
Mm,
soul, once you really surrender and give up fully and completely that ego of trying to make sense of it all, trying to fix it, trying to control the emotions that want to be released, and
mm,
fully, I think you just have to experience this. Like, it, to me, it felt like a version of me needed to die
yeah.
fully and be done with that version of my
Mm,
life and allow for this void to be without freaking out. And
mm,
in that void is when I feel like something took over me and just guided me through.
wow.
And that's when I started to get the insights of, okay, now you're ready to listen.
Wow, that's extraordinary. I love that you shared that so much. And I love that you named the language of the soul of it, because it is something like that. And you said something else that's so true and so pertinent, that is the hard piece, which is you have to go through a bit of an ego death to meet it.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to abandon the whole ship in a certain regard to receive something.
So when
Not
you, so
every time,
people,
but
yeah,
enough. You have to abandon it enough. Yeah.
yeah, I think the first time for sure. And then you have that insight of, oh, now I know what to do in order to access that intuitive intelligence or that,
Mhm.
embodied intelligence or the
Right. You
language
break
that you
through the
use.
first initiation of it.
Hmm. How do you feel like the movement, you speak about the body has its own language as well. Like you said that the body and the mind operate on different levels. How would you describe the difference? If to somebody
Yeah.
who like doesn't understand that part of it.
Well, obviously, it's all, symbiotically connected as well. But I
Yeah.
think what the real distinction is that, in my opinion, we've been so detracted from feeling that we
Yes.
stopped making the connections that are already happening, because those connections are firing. But from the time that we've been in school, we've just learned push it down, don't feel it, don't say it, don't express it. And there's a variety of reasons why it's weak. You don't want to become sensitive. You don't want to this, you don't want to that, right? So we're fed all of these reasons why we shouldn't feel. And when we turn that all the way down, the mind just has to kind of figure things out, and it just goes, well, I don't know, and it just goes logic, 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 research, research, research. But there's kind of living from the neck up sort of thing. And it's not even our fault. It's the conditioning and the, I want to say, programming in a certain way that we receive. And it's
Hmm.
deeply faulty, and it's deeply misleading, because it's really in my opinion, disconnecting us from our power, which is to know what we feel and to move from that place. So
Do,
yeah,
do
I
you
think
think the
that that's really the distinction.
powers at that be the governments of the world and the leaders of the world and this and that, do you think they are now in today's day and age consciously aware of how they are taking our power away, or do you think this is just a byproduct of what initially happened back in the day when this was taken away from us?
Yeah, it's a bit of both. I will say that it's pretty interesting, because we've all lived through the last 6 years where we can see that all of the world governments are on the same page, and that doesn't really make a lot of sense, does it? So it's
Hmm.
like we can see that there's something there that's being formulated without people's real deeper understanding, in my opinion. I think it's been this way for a while. I think people have been encouraged to be out of their power for a long time. And the more that I research, especially the feminine archetypal leaders, who you never hear about, and then the connection to the divine that they had, and how they were burned at the stake, or how they were exiled, and all of these, and kind of shoved down way in the history books so you would never hear about it. It's all been the same thing: power and control. So who's
Mm-hmm.
got power and control over the masses, right? And what I discovered when I was teaching world dance, so I was teaching at Iona College, now it's Iona University. I don't know if you're familiar with it, in New Rochelle, New York, and I was
Ah.
teaching, world dance class. So I was researching all these different dances, and a lot of them I had done. It was like flamenco dance and hula and haka and capoeira. And, I was researching them a little deeper to bring in these different, talks, and I was also, dancing with the kids. So we had kind of practical, and we also had theory. But the fascinating thing that I realized in terms of dance and power was that, at a certain point in history, whatever the dance was, whether it was hula or capoeira, whatever it was, um, whatever authority was in power decided this is this is too much. We don't want this happening. They're gathering together. They are,
What a
connecting
crime.
as a community. They are in something, right? And it was like, whether it was religious figure or political figure, they put the kibosh
Mm.
on it, and said, this is outlawed, or you are exiled, or you are worse off in some way if you do this. So they had to completely ban and shut all the dance down. The dance that was truly coming from the soul, the dance that was the storytelling of the lineages, the
Mm.
dance that was really expressing the power of something, right? Even in the US, like, the Native American people in the ghost dance, right? So it's like they were the U.S. Army was fearful of them gathering together and dancing around the fire. So they
They
had to,
knew. They
shut it
knew
all
the
down, right?
power of that.
So yeah, so it
Yeah.
was just like
Then we wouldn't be able to be controlled. We would always feel this void within our own selves in terms of like that fulfillment is just never going to be fully satisfied if we are disconnected from our soul, if we're disconnected from our inner voice. And
disconnected from
therefore,
the body.
and disconnected from the body is going to make us also believe more easily in what people are telling us instead of being in touch with what we know to be
Right.
true
And that
deeply within.
overarching theme of having a middleman between you and the divine always. And again, to whatever people need to do or believe, or, my family's very religious, and I respect that for them.
Of course.
And I've had to learn how to just self-source and say, this is my
Yes.
relationship with God, and this is what I feel and know in my heart. And it's different from what I'm hearing here. And I trust this more. I trust
Mm.
what I'm getting and receiving more because I can feel it. And it's always led me and it's never been wrong. So I'm going to hold on to that. And I just feel like that piece was something that even, the martyr Joan of Arc knew, that it was like, okay, I hear the voice of God and no man is going to stand between me and the voice of God. And they had to
Yeah.
make an example of her because
Mm.
they don't want people going straight in and saying, well, yeah, you can actually feel and just connect to source energy. So it's been a long battle on this planet for power and control, and it's kind of like we're at this massive frontier right now where things could get pretty intense, and humanity's also going through a massive awakening. So
Yeah.
it's a very interesting time to be alive, and I feel like people like you and I who are doing the work and really
Holding the
holding
spaces
down
for
what we
people
said to
to
hold down.
remember.
Yeah,
Mm.
it's a lot to bear witness to, and we're not going
What a
down without.
gift. Yeah. I mean, I always say, I'm like, of course I would sign up for this moment in time to be on the planet during this mass awakening in terms of we get to witness a complete transition of power from this hierarchical structure back into the hands of each and every single human and into each and every single thing that's alive, and God gets to experience the multitudes of its expression again. And I feel like it's like the whole point of this whole human existence was for this, for
Yeah.
us to forget and then for us to remember. And it's just such a beautiful time to be here. So I want to just shift gears a tiny bit into relationships,
Mm,
because I my journey has been dismantling the patriarchal view of relationship and really tapping into what is the purpose of relationship as
mm,
embodied sovereign human beings.
mm.
I know you're in a relationship yourself, so what has your journey been like with being this on this journey while creating this
Yeah.
union?
Thank you so much. And, I really appreciate that you're all about dismantling the patriarchal view of it because it's also the necessary medicine, right? For what we're all needing to do. I was very disempowered in my relationships for the majority of my life.
Me too.
And there were some reasons for that. I think, early family dynamics and the identity that I took on in my early childhood around who I was in the family, trying to get approval,
Mm.
in a certain regard from like my brother who was bullying and rejecting me a lot. And it was just like, okay, maybe if I can just get him to love me, then, and I took that
Yes.
imprint and I brought it into all these different relationships with men around, something I've heard you talk about. If I can change myself and get them to, just see me, then they would love me. And if I could just give more, and if I can just, do all this, and
Yep.
then they'll get it. And they don't, and they won't. And you waste
Mm.
your time and your heart and your
Your
precious,
life force
precious
energy.
energy. And I learned a little too late. And that's fine. Like, I really appreciate the journey I have because it's made me the woman that I am. And it was super painful and it lasted a very long time. I didn't meet my husband until I was 44.
Wow.
So,
First of all, that gives so many of my listeners hope that it is never too late. And also 44, I love that number. That's so special.
yeah.
That, I mean, I've been also seeing 44 everywhere lately in my world, with 44 being an age where a lot of women are having babies.
Mm,
And, society always says after 35, it's really hard to get pregnant. I'm like, 44-year-old women all over my algorithm right now are getting pregnant with healthy babies and just thriving.
amazing.
And there's something to 44, I think, that is really special in our generation. So, sorry, continue.
Yeah,
44, you met your
absolutely. And I feel
partner.
like when you say our generation, I feel like, what's a little trickier in terms of taking time is that I feel like our generation is doing so much of the unwinding and unbinding of
Yes.
what we were handed intergenerationally, ancestrally, collectively. And it's taking us, like, we're like, I need a little more time to disarm and reconfigure some things
Yes.
before we are coming into these unions, because we're not, a lot of us are not just here to do the same old song and dance. We're here to, really reinvent what it looks like to be in a conscious relationship when we haven't had a mold, when we haven't seen an example of what it looks like.
Yep.
So there's been a lot in the,
So,
I
of
guess,
course, it's going to take some
generation.
time.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm glad I met him when I did. I wouldn't have been ready 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And it wasn't my timing. I'll say it was God's timing or source timing or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, it was quite the journey. So,
Yeah. I mean, I do believe that our romantic relationships are the most intimate in terms of having the mirror that we need in order to access deeper parts of ourselves. Or is that
absolutely.
more of a complete like self journey? I think a lot of people
Well,
go
I
back
will,
and
in
forth
my
on that.
experience, my husband and I are complete opposite in the way that we experience and go about life. We have obviously the shared values and we have the
Yes.
foundation of really, like, understanding each other, and we, hold a lot of compassion, and he does, he's done epic ends of personal growth, and he, does that for a living, and he supports and
Mm.
helps others in organizations and kind of
Wow.
rebuilding systems. And so he's on the front lines also. But I got to a point, I think, with my last relationship before I met him where I realized I can't do one more relationship with a man who's not willing to acknowledge what's here. Because
Hmm.
that was what was happening as I was getting into these very deep, soulful connections with men and spending years of my life with them. And there was a point that they were not willing to cross, right? They just never really wanted to go into the deep end. It was like they were just all too happy with, like, I just keep the relationship, and never wanted to talk about what was happening under the surface. And in my opinion, you can't really grow and you can't really access those things unless you're willing to meet them with compassionate curiosity and a safe holding space. Because, as you know, in the same old theme, what what happens that traumatizes us in relationship has to be healed in relationship. So
Mm.
when I met him, and I could feel my body relax, and I knew that my heart was safe, and I knew that he had capacity for meeting the difficult things, we started to really understand, like, okay, I think this can be something. And I really believe the reason our relationship took off the way it did was because we were in long distance for a while.
Oh,
And we used a process called authentic relating,
yeah.
where I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but yeah, so we were
Please
authentic
explain it
relating.
for the listeners if
Yeah,
anybody.
sure. So
Yeah.
it's very much a body-based practice of being with what's present here and communicating it
Hmm.
no matter what, and not about fixing or trying to rescue or change whatever the other person's saying, but just to hold it and witness. So, something might look like, well, when I heard you say that, I could feel my belly get really tight, and I noticed that I started feeling shame. And just to get really vulnerable with saying what's actually happening. He
I mean,
and I
that's
got
two nervous
reconnected very
systems that
quickly.
get to do the work together in a way that isn't feeling responsible for the other person's healing in any way, shape, or form, but simply be, like you said, the witness to it. And
Mm.
also, I know when I am just witnessed in my grief or in my anxiety or my, my inner child wounds that are coming up. And it took us a long time to get here, but it shifted when all I realized I needed was his hand on my body. I
Mm.
didn't need him to even understand what the grief was or what I was experiencing, because like I've experienced a very turbulent relationship with my parents and my family and this and that, and he, thank God, has a very loving family that actually healed me in so many ways of being able to
Mm.
witness a family of unconditional love.
Wow.
And for a while I thought that he's never going to understand me. We're always going to feel disconnected in that, and I'm always going to be alone in my grief and my trauma. But his nervous system was
Absolutely.
exactly what I needed.
So beautiful. Thank you for naming that so clearly. And what I'm feeling from what you're sharing is that part of the pain that we have is that we think we're all on our own, doing it all on our own, and there's no one else there, and no one else can be there.
No one's going to get it, and I'm
No
going to
one's
be
going to get
stuck
it.
in
They
this
can't.
grief
They
forever.
won't.
Yeah.
And we stay closed off for that reason. And there's something of a dam that breaks open when we realize, oh, we can be met in the place
Mm.
where we think is unlovable, untouchable, unknowable, and not only
Yes.
met but just held.
Yeah.
And that was the thing that I hadn't experienced before. And
Same.
it took,
What a
being with a
gift.
man who'd done considerable amount of work also on himself to really meet me in
Yeah.
that, because it's, I really believe in that age old saying again, people can only meet you as deeply as they've met themselves.
Yeah.
So,
How'd you
yeah.
guys meet?
Well, believe it or not, I was here. I think I had mentioned to you, I was here leading an embodied dance retreat I had a pocket of students in Australia, and I was just happy to come on over and
I mean, what are the
get out of the
chances,
US for a little bit.
but like, what are the
Yeah.
chances that you had this
Well, this was
retreat
the
in
funny
Australia
thing
and
because I was
yeah,
online dating at the moment, and I actually was having a pity party for myself. So I
yeah,
was on the plane here, and I was so like, whatever just happened, and it was like, I'm never going to meet anybody, and I was like in this so pity party. I actually remember like being on the plane and like wiping away a few tears, just feeling like I was done. Like that was it for me. Like I was just going to be a single woman and have to pick from a sea of men that didn't work for me, and just pick one and get on with it.
I mean, that surrender and that acceptance, it's the key, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, so there was a bit of that, and we had completed the retreat, and I was going to be here for something like another 4 or 5 days, and I just had a curiosity. I was kind of like, had nothing to do one afternoon, and I opened up my app, and I was like, let me see what the men are like in this area, just out of curiosity. So I opened up my app, and I was like, huh, these
Your
guys are
gut.
really different. Like the things that they are putting on their profile are really
Mm,
different. And it was just like really out of curiosity. I wasn't at all thinking, oh, maybe I'll meet. It was like, I'm getting on a plane a few days. Like,
yeah.
it was
Why
just
not
kind of
have
like,
some fun?
what am I
Yeah,
like in
see.
Australia?
Yeah.
So I just opened up and I was just kind of flipping through a couple, and I'm reading and just being very intrigued. And I came across his and I was like, huh, something about that guy. And I read his profile, and we had basically written the same things, in terms of
Of
what we were looking for.
course.
So I was
Yeah.
like, what the hell? I'm just going to send him a message. So I said, hey, I said, I think you're the male version of me.
Oh, that's
I said, I'm,
hilarious.
I'm
I
only in,
love
I'm
that.
only in town for a couple of days, but I'm open to meeting new people. And I left
Yeah.
it at that. And then he got back to me and he's like, wow, I thought the same thing. And, we dialogued a little bit back and forth. And then we had a phone call and we connected nicely on the phone call, laughing a lot. And then he just took initiation, which was the thing I wasn't getting from the men that I
Mm.
was in New York,
Yes.
New Jersey. He took initiation. I was like, well, I don't have a car. And he's like, I've got a car. So that's sorted. And he's like, I've made a reservation. I'm picking you up. And I was like, thank
So
God.
simple, but so powerful.
And I wasn't getting like,
Listen, man, it's really simple. Just make the plan,
just make the plan
put the effort in.
and allow the feminine to relax.
Mm.
Because I was dating these men and they were like, why don't you pick a place for coffee? And it's like, dude, Do you just not have it in you? Like, I
I
have to
don't
be in
know.
my masculine all day with my work and everything I'm putting out into the world. Can I just be a
Literally.
woman, please? But it takes, you know, it's like you don't want to just surrender to any masculine energy. Like, it has to be the masculine that you can feel your body relax with, that you can
Yes.
sense has the emotional depth that you're looking for. And it's not going to be perfect at all. I want to say, like, he and I push each other's buttons a lot because we're so opposite. Taurus, Scorpio, like on every
Oh
level,
my
like we
goodness.
are just like opposite, opposite, opposite. So, but it's the
But talk
greatest
about that
container
like
for
expansion,
it's
like
the greatest
both of
container
you.
for expansion. Yeah, because
Yes.
all of my stuff is always like, you know, he's like, "What are you doing? Like, what are you doing?" And we
Yep.
get to kind of hash it out, and we laugh a lot, you know, which is
Which
great.
is so important. Oh my gosh,
So anyway,
humor
that's how
is
it started.
everything. Oh,
Yeah.
I love this so much. Okay, so something that a lot of my audience struggles with is tapping into the body once the feelings of anxiety are present. And I would love if you
Mm,
can walk us through maybe a quick, like, 60-second somatic practice or something like that, that,
wow.
you know, can really help the listeners feel in their body when their mind begins to spiral in worst case scenarios, or that this work is not for me, the divine's not listening to me, I don't have access. How can
Mm,
we get them?
yeah. So I'll give a quick approach and then I'll give a little longer approach. So the quick approach, first thing I would do is notice, take the
Mm.
pause, notice, take the pause and say, okay, I'm feeling something, and make a commitment to be with it. So that's number one, is just noticing what you're feeling, take a pause and make a commitment to say, okay, I'm going to acknowledge what this is. Place a hand on the body, on the heart, on the belly, somewhere that you're feeling, you know, a little bit of tenderness or activation, and just be willing to feel what's there. And in my way, I really like to name it. So I'm feeling anxious. I can sense I'm feeling anxious. What's underneath that? I'm afraid I won't be liked. Okay, I'm going to bring some compassionate holding. And I work very, I did hands-on healing for 25 years. So I'm
Oh,
very, I
wow.
want to say multidimensional in the way that I work. I will bring God or source energy right into my heart, or I'll bring in what's called the Amaria flame into my heart, which is like a white blue
Mm.
flame of transformation. And I'll just say, you know, that divine holy witness, whether it's God or high self or whatever people are comfortable with, is to just be with this pain with me. So again, bringing in the
Mm.
compassionate witness. I'm feeling this anxiousness. I'm feeling not enough. I'm feeling not good enough. Please hold this with me. Please see me and feel this with me, because I really believe that divine source energy is completely sentient. So I would just bring that in my heart and say, God or source or whatever word people are comfortable with, please feel this with me. And normally you'll feel like a transmutation of energy or
I
something
feel
come over.
warm. I feel warmth.
It's just that way that we can go in and meet ourselves briefly, that is building what I'm going to say a confidence that we wouldn't see coming, because in that moment what we're doing is we're saying, I love myself enough to have my own back, and to not just crumble, but to say, I'm going to be with you, and I'm going to stay courageous, and I'm going to stay curious to meet what's here. And
Mm.
in doing that and meeting what's here, then it's much more easier to be yourself, communicate, and just being like, you know, but a minute ago I wasn't feeling so great, but I'm a little bit better now. And you don't even have to share that kind of thing, but just it's like, you know, that you've got you, and that something bigger has you. And when you live from that place of knowing you've got you and something bigger's got you, the earth has got you, all of a sudden those blocks and walls that seem permanent just start fading or even crumbling.
I think so, a big thing is like, I'm not chosen by God, so he's not, or like source. And
This is a big one.
yeah.
This is a
And
big
I
one.
think when you choose yourself, you choose that, how could I not be worthy of this divine connection? Of course, we all carry some sorts of shame and, these fears of, oh, are we good enough? And all that religious programming that I think has been instilled in so many of us, where you have to be pure and good in order to have this direct access to feeling that divine energy into yourself. And it's just like the opposite. It's a
Absolutely. And it's like as you're
beautiful.
reaching for God, God is reaching for you. And the thing
Yeah.
that I had to come to that I heard you just say as well, in terms of that disconnection, we can be such in a pain state or in a pain body state that I was telling myself for years, I'm doing it all on my own. And this wasn't conscious, by the way.
Yes.
I was holding a
That's
very
a
deep
big one.
unconscious belief that I was abandoned, like, thrown out of the garden, more or less. Like, okay,
Yeah.
like Eve bit the apple, thrown out of the garden kind of thing, whatever that
Yeah.
religious thing is.
Yeah.
And therefore, no one's coming. I'm doing it all on my own. And I've got to survive, and nothing's here. And when I went through probably the most intense ego death around it, which was probably a few months right before I met my husband, I was in a fetal position probably for a week, just crying out all of the pain of what it took for me to put the barricades up and
Mm.
to feel and to really believe that I was abandoned. And I had to just feel the rushing of all that coming in and telling me, I have never left you. You just walked away. I've always been here.
Yes.
And it was like, oh my God. And again, it wasn't a religious thing. It was just a knowing that I'm connected to something that's connecting to me. And I closed the door because I was in pain.
Mm.
And I had to, like, again,
And it was self-rejection almost in that sense. And
self-rejection, self-abandonment.
yeah,
And and then you end up showing up in relationships, self-abandoning
of
as well. A
course.
whole other
Yes.
conversation. But yeah, I was a big self-abandoner. What do you need? I don't have needs. What do you need? I
Me
can
too.
figure it out. I can.
And it's still a conscious practice for me to this day, where I catch myself and I'm noticing we're so attuned. Oh, I'm sensing that he's in a bad mood. Let me, overgive and overcompensate. Let me put away my work and tend to him. And it's like, actually, no, when he's ready, he'll come to me and he'll let me know. I don't need to seek and search for what's wrong just because his bad mood is making me uncomfortable in this moment. Bad moods can exist and it doesn't need to turn into a whole
Yeah,
search unit.
that's such an important thing. I completely relate to you, and I would say my partner calls me a rescuer, and he's like, "Don't rescue me."
Yeah,
Because we are so tuned in, and we, have a high degree of
we
empathy.
feel it. We don't want the negative energy in the room, and that's so selfish of us. Or I think that a tiny bit narcissistic in me to be like, oh,
Mm,
I'm not comfortable with the vibes in the room, so let me change, instead of letting him have his process, letting him have his time, letting him
right.
have his journey through whatever he's experiencing, and trusting that when he is ready, he'll come share
Yeah, thank you so much for saying that. I so resonate with every piece of what you just shared.
it.
I want to say, the thing that I've had to learn also as a person who does healing work is just because I can feel something doesn't mean that it's my responsibility to fix it. And
Mm.
that was just, that's the child self. Like that was my child trying to heal my parents or whatever it was I thought I could do. I can
Yeah.
feel what's happening with them and they're not saying it. So it's my job to, what do you need? I can make it better.
It's how we became so attuned to our environment,
We became
because
so attuned to our environment, and it's a beautiful gift. And empathy is a
yes,
superpower. And
yes,
what you just said is learning how to take a moment from that when it's happening, because it's like you can feel it rising up. Okay, I want to go over there and I want to make it better, make it better. How do I stay with myself and what I need right now, and just hold love for him as he's doing his thing, and just to let him know, like,
Mhm.
I'm here. Like, I
Yeah.
see you're having a rough day. I'm here, and he might go, "Arr," but whatever, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly. I
not make it
love
a
it.
personal thing. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, so beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Allison. This has been such a lovely conversation. where can my listeners find you, connect with you? How can they join your programs if they wanted to also learn about your methodology and your magic?
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been really a blessing and an honor to just have this conversation and, unveil certain things.
Yes.
So I am mostly on Instagram. So the handle is embodied.dance.
In
Um,
the links below. Yep.
yeah, and my website is embodied-dance.com. And so in terms of leadership, I offer the Embodied Dance Teacher Training Certification. I'm currently fully booked with that, and the next one doesn't open until early 2027. But I will be offering a program called Embody Your Dance in a few months that brings people through a process of what I'll call self-actualization through movement. So learning to meet the places that have not been met, bringing the conscious witness. And it's the process that I started when I was in Australia many years ago and have crafted a full method over these last couple of decades. So it has the power to really reshape who you think you can be, who you're being, and what's possible for you. So it's the thing I believe in the most. And for people who are interested in that and then want to go into the teacher training after, we do like a little, an easy
A bridge.
transition where they can apply some of that as well. So,
So
yeah, those are
beautiful.
probably the best ways to work with me. I also take a very few one on one clients throughout the year, but it's mostly a lot of small group work because I really believe
The
in safety.
most powerful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
And
it's like very small groups.
yeah, I love that. I love that so much. And I think, like we were talking about earlier, it's how you started with your journey of a small group, of being witnessed and seen by that safe container. And now you have turned that whole
Hmm.
experience into your works. That's such a full circle moment. I
Thank you for
love
that
it.
reflection. I hadn't actually named that. Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, all right, guys. Well, definitely check out Allison's work. She is phenomenal. I just feel so warm and just so much love energy is floating inside of me right now. So I hope you guys feel her energy as well. And I'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.